walking into a courtroom filled with grief, anger, and unbearable loss, and then facing the very person right in front of you who turned your life upside down, what would you feel? Wouldn't you reach the point of wanting revenge no matter the consequences? That's exactly what happened. From heartbreaking stories of abuse and unimaginable betrayal to unexpected moments of retribution, these cases reveal how far a parent's love can go, even to the edge of justice. From the heartbroken father of Hartley, struggling to control his anger and emotional outbursts, to Nitisha's father, who confronted Brown but was stopped by officers before things took a tragic turn. These cases show how far a thirst for revenge can go, even to the edge of justice. Starting with the first one. Case number 1, Quinn Bowes. Quinn Bowes, a 23-year-old from Patoka, Indiana, was sentenced to 25 years in prison for the heartbreaking death of his 3-month-old son, Parker. But what really happened to the baby that night? Let's see what happened to him. Bowes claimed Parker fell off a nursing pillow and hit his head on a coffee table. But when doctors examined the injuries, they didn't buy his story. The damage was far too severe. Brain and eye bleeding, bruises, and a strained neck ligament. Could a simple fall really cause this much harm? On May 3rd, authorities were called to a horrifying scene. Parker was unconscious. He was rushed to St. Vincent Hospital and later transferred to Riley Children's Hospital, where doctors fought to save his life. Tragically, he passed away on May 6th. An autopsy confirmed what many feared: Parker died from blunt force trauma. Bowes insisted he had fed and cared for Parker before falling asleep, but as the evidence piled up, his explanation unraveled. The jury didn't believe him, and the court handed down a 25-year sentence. But just when the case seemed closed, something shocking happened. Outside the courtroom, Parker's uncle, Jeremiah Matt Hartley, couldn't hold back his rage. In a burst of grief and anger, he attacked Bowes. Officers quickly intervened, and Hartley was arrested. Now he faces 6 months in jail for battery. Chief Deputy Prosecutor Abigail Brown Cox called the case heartbreaking, adding that the outcome was fair for all involved. But is it? Many are left questioning, was this justice for Parker or just another tragedy in an already devastating story? While Parker's case left everyone searching for justice, there's another father who wanted revenge at any cost. Case 2, Deshaun Brown. Next in line, Deshaun Brown, 23, stands accused of throwing a 3-year-old boy from a bridge into the Ohio River and fatally stabbing the boy's mother, Nitisha, who was stabbed multiple times and her body was discovered in a bag near the river. What could drive someone to commit such a horrific act? During the trial, 3 experts testified about Brown's mental state with mixed opinions. While they acknowledged his struggles, all agreed that Brown denied any involvement in the murders. Could his mental state have played a role, or was it just an excuse? Judge Megan Shanahan initially rejected a motion to exclude the death penalty. Despite evidence that Brown might suffer from bipolar disorder, she ruled that his illness did not appear to seriously affect his judgment at the time of the crime. But after further evidence came to light, the judge changed her stance, stating Brown was not suffering from a major mental illness when the crimes occurred. In a tense moment during the hearing, Nitisha Lattimore's father, Antonio Hughes, confronted Brown, but officers intervened before he did some irreversible damage. And just like that, here's another case that will leave you questioning the depths of human cruelty. Case 3, Ryan Burge. Ryan Burge, a 38-year-old from Clark County, Washington, was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the heartbreaking death of Hartley, a young girl he was entrusted to care for. How could someone so close to a child be capable of such horror? The brutality of his actions was chilling. It was found that Hartley suffered severe head injuries and tragically passed away at Portland Children's Hospital. While the jury convicted Burge of second-degree murder, they couldn't agree on a first-degree charge. Instead, they found him guilty of first-degree manslaughter, noting the cruelty of his actions and his betrayal of the trust placed in him. Meanwhile, Tafoya, Hartley's mother, struggled to find words for the unbearable grief she was experiencing, describing the loss as something no words could truly capture. The courtroom was filled with anguish as the family faced the man who had taken their precious child's life. But amid the emotional chaos, an unexpected moment unfolded. As the judge continued the proceedings, Hartley's father, Peter Anderson, did something that no one, not even the officials, could have predicted. The courtroom erupted in chaos when he suddenly lunged toward the bench, aiming for Burge. Just like him, Another mother's grief would soon lead to a shocking act in the courtroom. Case 4. Klaus Grabowski. On May 5, 1980, Anna, just 7 years old, made an innocent choice that literally ended her life. After a heated argument with her mother, she decided to skip school that day, going straight into the hands of a monster, Klaus Grabowski. The 35-year-old crossed her path before when she visited his home to play with his cat, but on that fateful day, he was waiting for her. His intentions far darker than Anna could have imagined. After Anna arrived, Grabowski held her captive and subjected her to unimaginable horrors, finally ending her life in a brutal way. He strangled her with a pair of his fiancée's tights and disposed of her body in a box by a remote canal. Grabowski thought he'd gotten away with murder and kept it secret from everyone, even his fiancée. But shockingly, it was his fiancée who eventually broke the silence, reporting him to the police. But why did she wait? Was there something that pushed her over the edge, or had she been blinded by love until now? Turns out that Grabowski wasn't a stranger to criminal behavior. He was a convicted sex offender and had already served prison time for abusing young girls before. But what drove him to escalate to murder? As the investigation unraveled, the court hearings brought an even more disturbing moment. Anna's grieving mother, Marianne Bachmeier, torn by unimaginable pain, did something that left everyone in the courtroom speechless. In an unexpected turn of events, she smuggled in a Beretta and fired multiple shots, almost all hitting Grabowski. Marianne was arrested on the spot, but what could drive a mother to do something so unthinkable in the face of a tragedy? The weight of her grief left the entire room in stunned silence. Despite the brutal crime that had torn her world apart, her actions spoke volumes about the depth of her sorrow and the unimaginable burden she carried. Next in line is Gabriel Daniel Fernandez. Case number 5, Pearl Fernandez. Gabriel Daniel Fernandez was born on February 20th, 2005, to Arnold Contreras and Pearl Fernandez. Shortly after his birth, Gabriel was placed in the care of his great-uncle, Michael Lemos Carranza, and his partner, David Martinez. They raised him for the first few years of his life, but was again sent to live with his mother Pearl and her boyfriend, Isario Aguirre. During the time Gabriel spent with his mother and Aguirre, disturbing signs of abuse were reported to social workers and the authorities. He was frequently forced to eat cat litter, feces, spoiled food, and even his own vomit. His tiny body was burned with cigarettes, heated spoons, and lighters. He was bound and gagged, forced to sleep in a cramped cupboard. His teeth were knocked out with a bat. How could anyone even allow this to happen to a child? On May 22, 2013, Pearl Fernandez made a chilling call to 911, claiming that her son Gabriel was not breathing. When paramedics arrived, they found Gabriel naked, severely beaten, and unresponsive. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors declared him brain dead. He passed away 2 days later, on May 24, 2013, at Children's Hospital, Los Angeles, just 8 years old. Gabriel's autopsy revealed the heartbreaking truth. He had died from blunt force trauma, with neglect and malnutrition making his suffering even worse. Gabriel's death marked the beginning of Pearl's downfall, ultimately leading her to her own tragic end. In prison, she became the target of brutal violence from fellow inmates. Using padlocks wrapped in socks, they attacked her with brutal force, leaving her severely injured and ultimately leading to her death. But was it enough? And did the punishment she faced truly match the horrors she caused? While Pearl Fernandez's cruelty shocked the world, another mother's devastating crime would reveal a horrific motive of its own. Case number 6, Susan Lee Smith. Susan Lee Smith is an American woman who was convicted for the horrific murder of her 2 young sons, 3-year-old Michael and 14-month-old Alexander, in 1994. On October 25, 1994, she told the police that her car had been carjacked by a black man who drove off with her children still inside. For 9 days, Smith made emotional public appeals on national television, begging for their safe return, but the truth would soon unravel. After a thorough investigation and a nationwide search, Smith finally confessed on November 3, 1994. She admitted that she had driven her car into John D. Long Lake, intentionally drowning her sons. Why would she do something so unthinkable? Turned out that her motive was to win back a man, Tom Finley, a wealthy local who had ended their relationship because he didn't want children. Interestingly, from the start, detectives didn't buy her story and suspected she had murdered her sons. After her confession, the investigation led to John D. Long Lake, where the bodies were found 122 feet from shore, still inside the car. Soon after, Smith was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. In 1995, she was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of release. Next in line is another shocking story that unfolded in prison, where a notorious killer faced a brutal end. Case number 7, Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer, also known as the Milwaukee Monster, was charged with the murder of 17 men. Dahmer committed crimes so horrific they defy imagination. His acts included sexual assault, dismemberment, necrophilia, and even cannibalism. But how did someone go from an ordinary childhood to committing such unspeakable acts? Dahmer's behavior started to change as he grew older. Although he had a seemingly normal childhood, with time he became more introverted, avoiding social interactions and shutting himself off from the world. During his teenage years, he had little interest in hobbies or relationships. Instead, he spent his time dissecting animal carcasses and stayed highly intoxicated. Were these all signs of the darkness growing inside him? As an adult, Dahmer's pattern of cruelty took a chilling form. He tricked his victims, mostly young men, into his home by promising them things they couldn't deny. Once there, he would murder them, then engage in unspeakable acts with their remains. He kept body parts of the dead in his refrigerator and even ate some of his victims. How could someone commit such horrors? Dahmer would not even have mercy on kids, and one of his unfortunate victims even included a 14-year-old boy. After he was arrested, the family of Dahmer's victims would stand before him in the courtroom, sharing the grief, anger, and heartbreak. They would speak of their loved ones as brothers, nephews, uncles, cousins, friends, and curse Dahmer, unable to hold back their rage. One relative shouted, "I'm mad. This is how you act when you are out of control. I don't ever want to see my mother go through this again. Never. Jeffrey, I hate you. Mother, I hate you." The pain was evident, and it was clear that the case had left a deep scar on everyone affected. Dahmer was ultimately sentenced to 15 life terms, which added up to make 957 years in prison. His crimes were so horrific that even Dahmer himself said that he deserved nothing less than death as a punishment. Turned out that Dahmer did eventually receive the punishment he deserved, but not in the way many expected. He was murdered by a fellow inmate in prison. Could anything ever truly make up for the horrors he caused? The case of Jeffrey Dahmer remains one of the most disturbing in modern history, leaving a lasting impact on both the victims' families and the public. Case number 8, Jasmine Gordon and Clifford Thomas. Next in line is Jasmine Gordon and Clifford Thomas, who appeared in Wayne County Circuit Court in Michigan, facing charges related to the death of 3-year-old Jamila Smith, Gordon's daughter. Both were convicted of involuntary manslaughter. The case horrified many as it revealed the extent of the abuse the little girl endured. How could someone harm a child so badly? Shockingly, the medical examiner revealed that Jamila had over 50 injuries, showing that the abuse had been ongoing. The prosecutor pointed out the strange fact that Gordon refused to explain what had happened to the child when she arrived at the hospital. Why didn't Gordon speak up when her daughter was clearly in distress? Was this an attempt to hide the truth? Meanwhile, as all these questions were being raised during the session, Dwayne Smith, Jamila's father, was about to deliver a devastating statement, but officers quickly intervened. Now, imagine a scene where a prisoner is attacked by another right in front of a judge. Case number 9, Devon Mothswain. This happened in the case of Devon Mothswain, charged with the tragic murder of 9-month-old Darius King Grigsby. The baby was fatally shot in a drive-by incident, and after being found guilty, Mothswain faced 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder. Alongside him, a 17-year-old was arrested, accused of being the driver. Despite Devon's repeated denials, surveillance footage from nearby businesses and phone records placed him at the scene. For a while, he claimed he had nothing to do with the shooting. But eventually, Mothswain admitted to being there that day, riding in a burgundy Chevrolet with a friend. As the trial went on, Darius's family was there every step of the way, determined to see justice for the little boy. But as the proceedings continued, something unexpected happened when chaos broke out in the courtroom and an inmate did the unexpected by attacking Devon. Last but not the least, shifting from a tragic loss of an innocent life to a shocking act of violence within a family. Case number 10, Eric McCullough, murder of niece. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, a shocking incident unfolded one evening when Eric McCullough, a 47-year-old man, fatally stabbed his niece, Tetta McCullough, during a violent confrontation. The attack took place on a Wednesday night around 10:30 p.m. as Teta and a man named Lee were walking through College Hill Courts. Without warning, McCullough leapt from a porch and stabbed them both. Lee didn't initially realize McCullough was armed, but when he tried to intervene, McCullough slashed his side before walking away. Teta collapsed in a nearby courtyard, and despite efforts to save her, she died from her injuries. The motive behind the attack seemed rooted in ongoing family tension. McCullough and Teta had been arguing for weeks, with Teta accusing him of spreading rumors about her drug use. During questioning, McCullough admitted to the crime, leading to charges of criminal homicide. But the court proceedings took an unexpected turn. Lee, who had shown up in court for a separate matter, was called as a witness. To everyone's shock, he had secretly schemed to disrupt the case. As the trial went on, Lee's mischievous behavior left the courtroom in disbelief. In the end, Lee was sentenced to 11 months and 29 days for his role, while McCullough received a 6-year sentence after being convicted of voluntary manslaughter instead of second-degree murder. The jury deliberated for 7 hours before reaching their decision and also dropped the aggravated assault charge related to Lee's stabbing. What led to these unexpected twists? And what does this case say about the complexities of family conflict and justice? Share your thoughts in the comments section. And that's a wrap on these 10 cases. Don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like these. See you next time.